Ever since she was a little girl, Sarah had dreamed of visiting London. She grew up in a small village far from the hustle and bustle of big cities, but London always held a special place in her heart. She would watch documentaries about the city's rich history, marvel at the pictures of the Grand Buckingham Palace, and fantasize about riding on one of those iconic red double-decker buses. For Sarah, London wasn't just a city, it was a symbol of everything she wanted to experience: adventure, freedom, and the excitement of being somewhere new and unknown. But growing up in a modest family with few opportunities to travel, her dream of visiting London always seemed far out of reach. As the years went by, Sarah never lost that desire to explore London. She worked hard in school, secured a good job, and eventually, after years of saving, she realized that her dream could finally come true. She had saved enough money for a 2-week trip to London. The moment the realization hit her, she booked her tickets. Sarah was going to London. The weeks leading up to the trip were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. Sarah mapped out every detail of her itinerary. She wanted to make the most of her time, so she carefully selected the places she wanted to visit: the Tower of London, the British Museum, Westminster Abbey, and of course, Buckingham Palace. She even made a list of small cafes and local spots she had read about online, eager to experience London like a true Londoner. Finally, the day arrived. With her suitcase packed, her passport in hand, and butterflies in her stomach, Sarah boarded the plane to London. The flight felt surreal. For the entire journey, she gazed out of the window, imagining what awaited her. When the plane touched down at Heathrow Airport, she could hardly contain her excitement. As Sarah stepped out into the busy airport terminal, the energy of London hit her immediately. It was a cold spring morning, and the air was crisp and fresh. People rushed past her, their lives moving at a pace Sarah wasn't used to, but she loved it. It felt like she was in the heart of the world. Her first destination was the little flat she had rented in a quaint neighborhood near Paddington. It was a cozy apartment with a view of the street, and as she opened the window, the sound of London filled the air: car horns, distant chatter, and the occasional ringing of a bicycle bell. It was perfect. After settling in, Sarah wasted no time and set out on her first adventure. She walked to Hyde Park, just a short distance from her apartment, and was immediately struck by its beauty. The park was a peaceful oasis in the middle of the bustling city, with wide open spaces, towering trees, and the shimmering Serpentine Lake. Sarah found a bench near the water and sat down, taking in the scene. People were jogging, walking their dogs, or simply enjoying the quiet. She couldn't believe she was finally here. The next few days were a whirlwind of sightseeing. Sarah made sure to visit all the major landmarks she had dreamed about. She marveled at the Gothic architecture of Westminster Abbey and the Houses of Parliament. Big Ben, though undergoing renovations, was still an impressive sight. She stood in front of Buckingham Palace, hoping for a glimpse of the royal family, though she knew it was unlikely. One of her favorite moments was her visit to the Tower of London. As she walked through the ancient fortress, she felt a deep connection to the past. The crown jewels sparkled under the lights, and Sarah was in awe of the centuries of history that had unfolded within those walls. She thought about the stories of kings and queens, of battles fought and won, and of the sacrifices that had shaped the city she was now exploring. London was everything she had imagined and more. The streets were alive with culture, history, and the buzz of life. She loved how each neighborhood had its own character. Covent Garden with its street performers and market stalls. The sleek and modern vibe of the City of London, and the bohemian charm of Camden. Everywhere she went, Sarah discovered something new, something exciting. One afternoon, Sarah took a break from the usual tourist spots and decided to get lost in the city. She wandered through quiet residential streets, stopping at little cafes and bookshops along the way. She found herself in Notting Hill, a neighborhood famous for its colorful houses and the Portobello Road Market. The market was bustling with activity, and Sarah couldn't help but smile as she browsed the stalls selling everything from antiques to fresh produce. As she continued her exploration, Sarah found a small bookstore tucked away in a side street. The sign outside read, "Second-hand treasures," and the sight of it drew her in immediately. Inside, the smell of old books filled the air, and the shelves were crammed with novels, poetry collections, and historical tomes. She spent hours browsing, losing herself in the pages of forgotten stories. Eventually, she found a worn-out copy of Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist *, a fitting souvenir from the city that had inspired so much great literature. As the days passed, Sarah began to feel more and more at home in London. She mastered the underground, navigating the maze of train lines like a local. She even found a favorite cafe near her apartment, where the barista greeted her with a warm smile each morning. It was these little things, the routines, the familiar faces, the hidden gems, that made Sarah feel connected to the city in a way she hadn't expected. One evening, near the end of her trip, Sarah decided to visit the south bank of the River Thames. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city, and the river sparkled as it flowed past the iconic landmarks, the London Eye, St. Paul's Cathedral, and the Shard towering in the distance. Sarah walked along the river, watching as the city slowly transitioned from day to night. As she stood on the bridge, looking out over the water, Sarah felt a sense of contentment wash over her. London had always been her dream, and now, having experienced it, she realized it was even more than that. It had become a part of her story, a chapter in her life that she would carry with her forever. The trip had been everything she had hoped for and more. But as her departure date neared, she felt a bittersweet mix of emotions. She wasn't ready to leave, yet she knew she had to. London had given her so much, a sense of adventure, a deeper understanding of history, and a renewed sense of independence. She knew that one day, she would return. On her last morning in the city, Sarah took one final walk through Hyde Park. The sun was shining, and the flowers were in full bloom. She found the same bench she had sat on during her first day in London and took a deep breath. This city had changed her in ways she couldn't fully describe. It had awakened something in her, a curiosity, a love for exploration, and a reminder that dreams, no matter how big, can come true. As she boarded the plane back home, Sarah looked out the window and watched as London faded into the distance. A smile spread across her face. She had come to London as a tourist, but she was leaving as someone who had lived the city, breathed it in, and embraced everything it had to offer. And as the plane soared into the sky, Sarah knew this wouldn't be her last adventure. London had opened her heart to the world, and there were so many more places waiting to be explored.